break students out alphabetically by last name. We also have Ms. Skepa that keeps everything running smoothly. So I encourage you to reach out to your child's counselor if you have any questions or concerns. So in terms of what we're going to be talking about, we are going to cover several things. First being sort of what the post-secondary options are for your child. We're going to talk a lot about the junior year college process and go really in depth on that piece. We're also going to talk about Naviance. Naviance is our career in college planning platform. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tool. And then finally, we're going to have a panel of admission representatives from Northeastern, Providence College, and UMass Amherst here, who will answer some of the questions that you have. What the your child's post-secondary options are. I always like to preface this by saying that every student's journey is unique, and one path isn't better than the other, and there are several options. Students can decide to take a prep year, they may decide to do a gap year, or maybe go into a career training program to study HVAC or plumbing, cosmetology. Some students want to become electricians. Some students choose to go directly into the workforce, and others join the military. And then I would say the bulk of our students here at Belmont High School go on to a 4-year program. About 88% of our students go on to college, and we're going to talk a lot about that this evening. So in terms of prep schools, why might a student decide to take an extra year of high school? Some students decide to do this because they want to improve their academics and strengthen their curriculum to then apply to college. Some of our students are on the younger side and may need that extra year to mature and to grow and to be ready for that college experience. And some other students may do it for athletic purposes. If you're going through that process, it usually requires an English and math teacher recommendation along with a guidance recommendation. And then typically you will do an interview at that school. Gap year. This is also another option that we're seeing more and more students take advantage of. And that doesn't mean that your child is sitting on the couch all year. It is an experience, really a curated custom experience to give your child some more perspective and maybe a little bit more experience to really think about the things that they want to do if they want to apply to college. Some of our students have participated in City Year. Some students work for a year, do other various community service jobs. Some students travel abroad. We do recommend that if your child is interested in doing a gap year, to still apply to college if that's on the horizon for them. Some colleges, not all, will allow you to defer for a year. So you could apply to college, get accepted, decide to defer your admission for a year and do a gap year. But again, that depends on the college. So you really have to look closely at the colleges where you're applying. We've listed on here some great resources for you if you want to look further into some gap year opportunities. The one thing that I want to bring your attention to is that Brookline High School will be hosting a gap year fair on January 18th. That's from 6 to 8:30. And Reading High School is offering a gap year fair on January 19th, also from 6 to 8:30. If you go to that last link, the Go Overseas Gap Year Fairs link, if you click into there, you can find more information and register for those events. Talked a little bit too about students who might want to, do a career, go right into a career and participate in a career training program. We've provided a list of links here so you can find out more about what programs are available to your student. The one thing that I do want to draw your attention to is Minuteman Tech. It's they offer a lot of great programs, a lot of great postgraduate programs. It's convenient and it's affordable. So if you have interest in one of these programs, I highly suggest checking out Minuteman Tech. And of course, the college option is, you know, again, like I mentioned, many of our students go on to four-year colleges, and there's a lot of different ways you can apply. So we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about admission deadlines and sort of what these acronyms that you probably have been hearing mean and what they mean for your student. So one is an early action or early decision deadline. So these happen earlier in the year. They could happen at the ED decision and the EA can happen at the same time. They typically happen between October 15th and November 15th. So what does it all mean? So let's talk about the early action, EA. This is a non-binding application deadline. So that means that your child doesn't have to go. A student who does EA is sort of ready in the fall to apply to college. They feel good about their transcripts from grades 9 through 11th. They're ready to work on their applications. They have their essay ready to go. They're getting their recommendations pulled together and just really feel confident about applying early. You will hear earlier than a regular decision if you decide to go that route. The early action single choice restrictive admission deadline is typically for a small handful of highly selective colleges. That means that you can only apply to one school EA, non-binding. Some schools will allow you to apply to other public schools, but typically you can only apply early action to one school. So you really have to look at, if you do decide to go that route, the implications of what that means depending on the college. And then finally, it's the other early admission deadline is early decision. So early decision means that it's a binding agreement. You can only apply to one school ED, and you may not know what the financial impact of that is yet. The counselor and the parent and student all sign the binding contract. If you can still apply to other schools early action, but if you get accepted to early decision, you must rescind your early action applications. Some schools do have what's called an early decision 2 deadline, and that's just later. They're typically happen in January. Process means that the college will review your application when you're ready. We encourage you to apply to those schools as soon as possible, because at some point they stop accepting applications, and you will receive your decision on a rolling basis. So once the institution has reviewed your application, you'll get a decision. And regular decision, that typically happens between January 1st and January 15th. That gives your student a little extra time to spend on the application. It also allows colleges to see your first and second quarter grades in case you want the colleges to really see you're really working hard your senior year, and you want them to see your transcripts for those 2 quarters. Is for community college. There's no admission requirement other than a high school diploma. It usually requires a math or English placement test, and really you just have to look out for the registration deadlines and make sure you're registering for your class before that registration date closes. Now I'm going to turn it over to Sherry, and she's going to talk further about the college process.
Thank you, Ms. Mandy. All right, I'm going to continue along with the college process. During junior year in the spring, guidance counselors will be going into the juniors' biology classes, and we will go in and discuss this whole process with a lot more detail. We will talk with them as well about all of their different options and make sure that they know how to use all of the different tools that are available to them in Naviance, which is our program that you will hear more about later in this program. We go in twice, February and April. The other thing that's coming up soon will be the course selection process that will start in February. Guidance counselors meet with all of our students in March. And some things to consider for current juniors for next year. You want to select a schedule that is challenging for yourself, but you don't want to overburden yourself. You need to consider all the different activities that you are doing next year. It could be anything from, after school sports, music, theater, a part-time job, home responsibilities. Factor that in with your classes that you're selecting, and then keep in mind applying to college is kind of like having another class for that first semester, depending on when you're going to do the bulk of the work for that. So feel free to meet with your guidance counselor before the actual course selection meetings. If you have any questions about that, we're happy to talk through things with you. Senior year, you have a lot more space in your schedule for electives too, which is really nice. You can take some classes that you're really interested in. Excuse me. Most of our juniors, or many of our juniors, have created a College Board account already. If you took the PSAT, you've taken an SAT before, or a previous AP exam, you should already have a College Board account set up. But if you have not yet set one up, we just encourage you to do so. And when you, if you have not registered yet for standardized testing, I'm going to talk a spec about that. You can have that account all set up, ready to go. Ideally, juniors should meet with our guidance counselors sometime in the spring. You can meet with us individually, just student and counselor. You can invite your parent or guardian to join you. You can meet with us. We recommend after the first guidance meeting in biology classes, just so we can make sure we give you a lot of information. Excuse me. And then it can happen anytime through the end of the school year. We, of course, you can meet with us before that as well. But as far as registering for standardized testing, some juniors have already taken a standardized test, whether that be the ACT or the SAT. If they've already taken one, say this past winter, it's always a good idea to take it more than just once, unless you're completely satisfied with your score. You can sign up for another testing time, whether that be in March or May or June for the SAT, February, April, or June for the ACT. And then each test also has a test date over the summer. Belmont High School is available as a site for testing for the March SAT and the May SAT, but not the June. So keep that in mind when you're registering. ACT is a site for February and June at Belmont High School. You want to, start to think about, a timeline for yourself as far as if you are someone who plans to apply early to a school. So Ms. Putney mentioned early deadlines will start around November 1st. So if you're applying early, you want to have your testing completed at the latest by the October test date. Typically, early action or early decision schools will not take any testing past October. So keep that in mind. You want to also make sure you've factored in some time for yourself to prepare and study and do some test prep for that. Now, I've just talked all about the testing and how, you should sign up for these. You should also obviously be aware that many of the colleges and universities are continuing to be test optional, even for your year as well. So you want to, just check that. I'll talk a spec more about that in a minute. Another thing to keep in mind with the testing, if you are planned to try out and play Division I or Division II sport in college, the NCAA does have something that's called the NCAA Eligibility Center. In the past, students have had to submit their SAT or ACT scores to that. Currently, for the graduating class this year, it had been waived due to the pandemic. They have not updated on their site yet what the requirements will be for the graduating class of 2024. So if that should apply to you, just make sure you check it on the website. The other thing that we encourage all of our juniors to do is to go back into your Naviance account. In 10th grade, we met with you and we showed you how to build a resume on your Naviance account. We recommend going back in and adding to that resume any activities, honors, awards, employment, anything that you've done over the past year, because it can be very helpful to take that information and easily dump it into your applications come next fall. As testing, colleges will accept either the SAT or the ACT if they require them. Just a couple differences between the two. SAT tends to be more aptitude based, has more data analysis type questions, more historical text in the reading, and more multi-step math problems. Some of those math problems are open-ended and not purely multiple choice. And you cannot use calculator for the math section. Or actually, I take that back. You can use a calculator for some of the math sections, but not all. SAT will allow you more time per question if you're comparing the two tests. ACT will have more test questions, so you have a shorter amount of time to answer each one. ACT is more content-based, curriculum-based. All of the math questions are multiple choice. There tends to be a little bit more geometry on the ACT, and you are allowed to use your calculator throughout the test. And then the last big difference is there is a science section where you're gonna, look at some charts and data and answer questions about that. Some colleges will allow what's called super scoring. So super scoring is when you might have taken one, say, SAT in March, and then you took another one later in June, and you might have done better in your math section in March, but better in the reading section in June. Super scoring, you send both test date scores, but the college will hold your track of your highest, score in each of those sections and combine them together. Okay, so that's something that would also be listed on the college's website. One other little thing just to mention, if you are a student who has moved to the United States within the last 3 years and English was not your first language, some colleges require an English proficiency exam, which you can take it through the TOEFL or Duolingo. Duolingo is much cheaper, just FYI on that. Both of those websites are listed in here. And this PowerPoint presentation will be uploaded to our guidance website, so you can find it on there. It will also be in the students' guidance Google Classroom as well, with all of these links. And then finally, for the testing piece, fairtest.org is a website that has always listed any schools that are test optional. There's a lot of fluidity with it since the pandemic. Some schools, everybody went test optional, and then some schools have added it back. Other schools are continuing with it. So you really just need to look on individual websites or on that fairtest.org website just to see. A lot of kids will try the test and then, decide later if you, want to send it to the colleges or not. You want to take a look at what their average SAT or ACT score is that's being submitted. And your guidance counselor can help you with that as well. We can take a peek at that, what the average is. Does it make sense to send your scores to certain schools or not? All right, let's see. I mentioned already most of this slide already. If you are someone who has any testing accommodations already in school, in order to receive them through College Board or through ACT, you have to fill out an application. It has to get sent off, and the testing agency has to approve that separately from our high school. So make sure you contact either your guidance counselor if you're on a 504 or an ICAP, or your special ed liaison if you are on an IEP. And one little plug here for Drew Hilpern from Summit. He will be doing a webinar on February 8th from 7 to 8. He has lots of great information. He's a great presenter, and it's definitely something I would put on your calendar so you can get the latest information about all of testing, all things testing. Okay, briefly about the Common Application. So you may have heard of the Common Application. It is one application that over 1,000 schools accept. So when your student is making their list of schools, they can go on the Common App website, check and see, are the schools I'm applying to using the Common App? Great. If they are, you only have to do the Common App. If for some reason they're not listed on there, you would then go to the individual school's website and they will have their own application that you can, set up an account and start filling their individual application out that way. Common App comes out with their new version by August of every year. So the 2023-24 version will open up the beginning of August. And how the Common App is set up, I look at it as it has two sections. There's one main section that's where you're going to put in all of the general information about yourself, about your family, about your school, your grades, classes, activities that you've done, honors you've received. And then you will select from one of 6 or 7 essays for a choice, and you'll have your main essay. Everything in that section goes to any college that takes the Common App. So it's all the same, okay? I definitely, or both myself and I think my colleagues would also agree, recommend getting started on that in August. You don't have to spend tons of time, but if you just take a little bit of time, during August and start putting in that information, start working on your essay, it will make your senior year fall much less stressful. And if you do it a little at a time, it doesn't feel so overwhelming. The second part of the Common Application is what we call the supplement section, and there will be a different supplement for each school. So that will include school-specific questions. It could have some additional essays. They might ask you, why do you want to come to our school? What is it about our school that made you, become interested in it? Or they may ask you some random, cute little question about, what's your favorite fruit and why? So those are the two sections. The supplement questions change usually every year. So those won't be released until August. The main essay question back in that general section, lots of times they will stay the same from year to year, and then they change them every so often. They did just change last year. So I have not read yet to see if they're going to be exactly the same or not. But we do, you can go on commonapp.org and see the websites. You can Google the questions that were there for this year, take a look at those. We have them in what's called the junior folder that I'm going to talk about momentarily. We also have them listed there just to get an idea and start, thinking about some possible topics you might like to write about. Right, let's see, okay. Junior folder. Okay, so the junior folder is something that the guidance department puts together kind of as a one-stop shopping for our students. It is located, or it will be located, in their guidance Google Classroom, and it is also on the guidance webpage on our homepage, so you will be able to see it there. It contains many different documents. I'm not going to pull up all of them right now, but I just will mention them briefly. There will be there's information just about highlighting the different parts of the college process with a timeline. There's a document that lists, all of the different post-secondary options, giving you different links to check out gap years, to check out different trade schools and programs that are out there. There's a couple really helpful life skill documents, I will call them. Take a read through these. Students, take a read through these. Parents, you can also take a read through these and see, has your student already mastered some of those skills yet, or there's still some on there that they need to master before, being off on their own in college. So take a peek at those. You've still got a year and a half left to get them ready for that. And then the two important ones in terms of the guidance department are documents 7 and 8. They are the student questionnaire and the parent guardian brag sheet. Those documents, guidance counselors will be writing one of your recommendations. We'll be writing one of your recommendations, and it is very helpful for us to get some additional information, get to know you better. So we have the student questionnaire we ask the students to fill out and turn into us. And then we love to hear anything parents and guardians love to brag about you. And we are happy to hear about all those other, ways that they feel, you stand out, or things that they're proud of you for, or that make you unique. and share them with us so we can then highlight those strengths for you in your letter of recommendation. So if you can fill those two out, that would be great. Some counselors request that those documents be received by the end of June, junior year. Other counselors are fine not receiving them until September. So we will make sure we get that information to you. Document number 9 is the teacher-student profile, and that's when you ask teachers for recommendations, they will also, some of them have their own forms to fill out. This is just the general form that is in here. If you need the general form for a teacher, it's right there. Essay writing tips, the Common App essay questions from this past year are here in document 11. And then there's a post-secondary vocabulary sheet. You know, for anyone who might not have gone through the college process yet, has moved here, you know, from another country and has gone through a different type of process, have that in there as well. Okay, so recommendations. So many colleges will ask for 2 teacher recommendations. And with those, it is the student's responsibility to ask 2 of their teachers. Ideally, junior teachers can be great. You can ask a 10th grade teacher if you feel like, you know, your teacher has gotten to know you well, or you've been able to, you know, highlight some of your strengths or just your personality more in certain classes. You do not have to ask a teacher in a class where you have received an A, okay? Colleges, you know, don't necessarily just want to see, oh, yes, you got this high grade, but they want to learn about you and hear about you as a learner. You know, are you someone that works well with others? Are you someone that comes up with some unique ideas, you know, in class, or helps others, you know, see things from a different perspective? You know, how do you work in groups? So there's a lot of different things that the teachers will comment on in these. If you are choosing to major in a math or a science engineering type major, some colleges will specifically ask for a math and science or science teacher if you're majoring in those fields. Other colleges will just say it can be any 2 teachers is fine. So when you aren't sure yet what you're going to major in, it can be safer just to ask, you know, one from the humanities, so an English, history, or a language teacher, and then one from, you know, a science or a math teacher for your recommendations. And let's see, we recommend that our juniors start asking teachers in March. We will talk about this in our classes with you in February when we first come in, but March can be a good time to start asking. Not ask for more than 2 teachers to write recommendations. The teachers are writing their recommendations on their own time. So be very grateful and make sure you thank them. A nice little thank you note is wonderful. They appreciate that. And also, if, you know, by asking only 2 teachers, it gives everyone a chance, you know, to make sure that they can ask someone, and teachers don't end up overloaded with, you know, 70+ recommendations. I already mentioned the guidance counselor is also going to write you a letter of recommendation. So submit that student questionnaire and brag sheet by the end of the school year or by September, depending on counselors. We will send out your guidance recommendation, your school transcript, and the teacher's recommendation all get sent through Naviance. So all electronically through Naviance. In September, we will meet with the seniors and have another one of these nights for both for parents and for in school for students to go over the specifics of all the forms that you have to make sure you get filled out. The transcript forms, as I said, we will go through most of that in September for you, because it's a lot of details. You don't need to know that part right now. Outside recommendations. If you happen to be applying to a school and they allow additional recommendations, you're going to have to keep an eye on that yourself and check on their website. Some schools will say, we're not taking any more than 2 teacher recommendations. Other schools will say, we'll accept any 3 or 4, up to 3 or 4 recommendations. And then there are some schools, such as the really large ones like the University of California system, they won't let you submit any recommendations. But outside recommenders could be an employer, could be a coach, could be someone from your church, someone that, you know, has gotten to know you well. You can ask them. You just need to invite them as a recommender through the common application. There's a section there, the recommender section, and you will input their name and their email and invite them that way. It sends them a link and they upload the recommendation letter. You do not invite your Belmont High School teachers that way. So that's only for the outside recommenders. Belmont High School teachers will upload right into Naviance. Continuing along with the college search process, go visit. If you have the chance, go and visit schools. We realize you can't fly all around the country to see every single school, but try to see, as many as you can. You live in an area where there are a whole bunch of schools really close to you. You can see, check out some that are right in the city, such as Northeastern, Boston University, Emerson. There's, a whole bunch right there, UMass Boston. You can, head down the street, go check out Bentley, Babson, BC, see some smaller schools that are nearby. Providence is not far away. Just jet down to see them as well. And then you can head out west of down, Route 2 West a little bit and go check out UMass Amherst and get an idea of what a really large school looks like. When stepping foot on campus really can give you a sense of, can you picture yourself at this school? Is this something that you think you will, a place that you really feel like you could fit in? When you do go do those visits, definitely sign up for any tours, check in with admissions, ask lots of questions, ask about the dorms, ask about, the food, the housing, the different activities they offer, the support services that they may have, from drop-in tutoring services with writing or assistance in other ways too. If you're not able to go visit in person, definitely sign up for some virtual visits, webinars, information sessions online. I already mentioned best time to go is when the students are in school in session. So through May is ideal. But if you don't have time to go until summer, that's okay too. There will be a small number of students on campus even in the summer taking summer classes. But for this summer, okay, looking ahead, we of course want you to enjoy your summer before your senior year, but save a little bit of time, as I mentioned, either in August or somewhere along the way, thinking about that essay that you want to write, maybe coming up with some ideas, jotting some things down. Once August hits and the Common Application is open, you can go in and create your account and start filling things out in August. Naviance you will use to continue to do a lot of research. Mr. Shu is going to talk exactly about what Naviance can do and how you can use it, using their match tools, using Scattergrams, looking at data. Naviance holds all of the data from Belmont High School over the past 6 or 7 years. So it gives you a little bit more information than you would get by just going on a school's website. Continue to do any visits or learning about schools over the summer, adding to your list. When you meet with your guidance counselor, when you come back in September, it's nice to be able to give us a list of schools that you're interested in, and we can give you some feedback as far as, this is a school that's a likely school, good chance of getting in there. This is a school that is a reach. This is a school, that's more right in your range. A few other things to keep in mind: if you are someone who plans to apply to art, music, theater programs, sometimes, or not sometimes, there could be portfolio days. So pay attention to when those deadlines are. Auditions tend to happen in the fall for some of those programs. So just keep an eye on that. And I just want to mention just a couple things about financial aid. This is something that we will talk more in depth when we do the senior presentation in September. And lots of times we'll also have someone from an organization called MIFA, their Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority. Lots of times we, have them do a webinar for you, or we will direct you to their webinars. They're very informative as well. But there are 2 main forms when applying for financial aid that you will need to fill out next fall. One of them is called the FAFSA form, and that's the free application for federal student aid. You can't start filling it out until October 1st, but you do want to do it as soon after that as possible. So FAFSA is one. And then there's a second one called the CSS profile. The CSS profile is located on College Board's website. It is not free to fill out. It does have a minor little fee when filling that one out. And that one will ask you even more detailed questions about your financial situation. Do you own? Do you rent? How many cars do you have? A bunch of things. They ask a lot more. A lot of the private colleges will require both of those documents. Public universities tend to usually only require the FAFSA. Okay, so those are just some things to think about for the fall. Financial aid, also, each school has its own deadlines for financial aid, and they will tend to differ from when the actual application is due. So for instance, for just one off the top of my head. Boston University, I believe, has financial aid documents due December 1st if you want to qualify for any scholarships. So you just want to make sure you're paying attention to all that. I always recommend to juniors, make a really big Google Doc spreadsheet and, list your schools, list the deadlines for the application. Are you applying early? Are there any additional forms you need to fill out? The financial aid forms. So all of those things can all keep track of all of those easier. Make yourself a nice, colorful little Google spreadsheet. And then again, MIFA, we have listed down here as one of the resources that you can check out, as well as in the fall, they will have weekly seminars providing additional information. So that is all really helpful as well. I will mention one other thing. We didn't talk about scholarships here, but just some information as far as scholarships go. In the Naviance accounts, there is a section for scholarships, and our guidance secretary, Mrs. Skepa, will upload different scholarships as we receive them. So that's a good place to go and look. Most of them in there will be for seniors right now, but sometimes there are a couple that juniors can actually apply to. So that's one place where you can see, which applications for scholarships are out there. There are a few websites, and we usually advertise this more in the senior presentation as far as some good websites to look for. I will make sure that we add them, maybe even to this presentation. I'll try to add them to here, so you can see those as well. Belmont High School has a scholarship application that we send out to our students in February. That one application will qualify students for up to about 70 different scholarships. They may have different criteria. Some of them are general or don't have any specific criteria. But I would strongly recommend, when you're a senior in February, to fill that application out. And we'll remind you lots of times through your guidance Google Classroom, as well as the principal's newsletter. So I am going to right now pause this. So I don't think we mentioned in the beginning, but we attempted to record this live when we were actually doing the presentation, but the recording did not work on the first half of our presentation. So we're re-recording it. However, we do have the original live recordings of our admissions reps, which worked out very nicely. So I'm going to pause this, and Mr. Shu will be joining next to talk with you about Naviance.
So now the question is, we've done a lot of digging into different deadlines and different timelines we have in front of us. There are a lot of options out there, okay? So how do we find the right colleges for you? I want everyone to stop right now, take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Are you ready? Okay. There are several great colleges out there for each of you. If you're a student watching this, I truly believe that from the bottom of my soul. There are many schools out there that are going to be great for you. Okay, this idea of like one single dream school, I don't think it's super healthy. And I think especially knowing you all, what you've been through with the pandemic and everything, our goal is to help you figure out what's important to you, the different factors and criteria that are really important for you as a student and spending time there, right? Obviously, and to help your parents and guardians figure out what we can afford, what are things that are important for us as well as a family, right? So let's go, okay? Bear with me. This is going to get into some nitty gritty with Naviance. It's going to be awesome and helpful and support you, okay? So we use Naviance. It's a resource we pay for as a school district. It helps with like career and kind of like, interest inventory, things like that. We did that last year when you were sophomores, going through, the Myers-Briggs, things like that. Here as a junior and into next year as a senior, we usually look at data. Looking at data, we're helping to aggregate test scores, your grades, things like that. we're also able to use Naviance as like a one-stop shop to send things out to schools when the time comes, okay? We'll be meeting with all of you students in February and April to go through Naviance, like page by page using these tools together. So I'm going to talk about some different tools and things that are offered within the software on the app today, but we'll walk you through it much more closely in like a whole class setting. And then from there, we'll meet with you all in a one-on-one setting, okay? So just hang with us, okay? FYI, also junior parents and guardians, you were sent an email to join Naviance. This is yesterday, so this is on Wednesday. Once you put in the code, you'll get a thing. You'll be able to replace your student's name with your own name, and that'll be your account to view as their parent or guardian, okay? If you didn't get an email, if you did not get an email, please email Ms. Skepa as soon as you want to, and to get that code from you, okay? Great, so this is our link we have up here at the top, student.naviance.com/BelmontHS. As you may have guessed, there are many Belmonts out there. There are many Belmont high schools out there. There are many BHSs out there. Don't go to /BHS or Belmont, whatever. Like, you have to use this one specific link. Otherwise, you won't be able to log in, okay? There's a student login, this backpack over there. There's a parent and guardian login side, and we as counselors have our own like special login thing, okay? This needs to be used by you if you're applying to college as a student here at Belmont High School, okay? There's other things out there like Score and like Coalition, whatever. Use Naviance. It can be really helpful for you, and we're gonna dig into it right now, okay? Menu, when you log in, has a few different things. There's the About Me part, which has like your GPA that gets updated every quarter for you as juniors. Once quarter 2 closes, you do your midterms and whatnot, it'll update eventually and get updated in there. If you take any tenors test scores, it'll be in there as well. And also like your name and stuff like that, okay? The careers part I mentioned earlier, the careers we did last year, you can still use that. It's yours to use throughout all of, high school, junior, senior year. It's helpful for you. And then self-discovery, it has more of those kind of like Myers-Briggs, things like that. Colleges, that's the 4th part on this kind of like home area. Look at that now. So Naviance, I think, is great because you can look at a lot of schools. They have, I think, every single university or college in the United States listed in this database. They also have lots of schools abroad internationally, right? You can filter and compare schools really, really easily. You can then make lists of schools, a little heart thing. You can heart schools. I'm thinking about applying there. You can ultimately actually elect to start an application for these schools. You can look at the different deadlines, compare things. Naviance is really powerful in that regard, okay? There also are these scattergrams to look at data from the past 6 years. I'll get to them more later. But there's a lot of features out there. I'm going to talk a lot over the next few minutes about these features. It's like me talking. You need to get in there and start using this, okay? You have your accounts. You can log in, start poking around. Don't do this if you're like super like anxious and like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed right now. If that's the case, see your guidance counselor. Come send us an email, come by our offices. We'll sit down with you and go through it together. But this is software that you have to start getting used to and start doing yourself because like this is your experience, right? So when you get in there, my favorite feature is called the Super Match. Okay, Super Match lets you filter schools based on certain criteria, interests that are important to you. Okay, you'll see in the screenshot I have here, this is a student who's probably decided, I want to get out of Belmont. I don't like it when it's snowing outside. I don't like it when it's cold in February when the sun goes down at 4:15 p.m., right? They want to be on the West Coast. Sorry, mom, dad, guardian, whatever, if they don't want to be here anymore. That's fine. You can look for schools just in California. You'll also see on the right, like on the right side of the screenshot, it says major, right? They've picked a major. They want to filter only by schools that offer a certain major. I think I did like psych or something, like psychology, right? Once you filter these things through, you can do like diversity. Is like an HBCU? Is an LGBTQIA friendly school? Is it highly selective? Is it like kind of selective? Different criteria, right? You can start really, really big. Like the other day I was doing with a student and like the student and I want to look at like HBCUs in a few different states. There was like 40 schools immediately, right? And that was awesome. Going down from there, seeing, are you near a big city? Are you in the countryside or more rural school, right? Are you in a big city? These are important factors, right? Once you make a good search for yourself using like, 1, 2, 5, 10 different factors to filter through schools, you can save your searches and then use those filters later on when you're meeting with your parents or with a friend or comparing notes, whatever it is. That's really helpful, okay? So Supermatch is great. There's also, I said earlier, lists you can make. Say organize, this list appears to be schools starting with the letter B in the New England area. But like seeing this different lists in the thinking about when you heart them, right? You can then see schools, compare them side by side. under like app deadlines, you'll see some have multiple deadlines. You can apply early to some schools. You can apply early decision, early action. Comparing these is great. You can also decide to go in there and indicate interest level, right? Like highly interested. It's like my top choice that I really want to go to this school versus like this school I'm like kind of thinking about, but not really need to find more information. Or like this is what I call like a likely school. I'm kind of like not really into the school yet, but like I know it's a great place. It's like affordable that I want to go to. But like I'm not super psyched about it yet, right? Thinking about that way, okay? So you can also then, of course, use this to just stay organized and share with your parents, your friends, whatever, to see different things in the list. So college match. This helps you see different schools that students like you from Belmont have applied to in the past. Okay, so for example, this is just data showing that a lot of students apply to Bentley and also might apply to Babson and also might apply to Bentley, Northeastern, and BU. That's not surprising probably to most of you because you live in this area. These schools are well known to our community. What's really cool though is if you're looking at schools, say like on the West Coast or like in the South or the Midwest, and you're not really sure, like, well, this school's really awesome. I really want to go there, but like, on paper, it would be a reach for me. They might be able to say, hey, that's fine. Here's other schools in the area you might not have heard of before in that geographical area, or that have certain criteria like similar majors offered, good programs that like really might be kind of similar, aligned with your interests. That's really powerful. So there are so many this in the screenshot says 9,140 applications analyzed. So this is not just Belmont, this is like from like the whole country, looking at other applications of students who've kind of like made that same effort as you, made those same determinations as you. I want to go to school like this. What else is out there similar? Okay. Now, this is the most, I would say, exciting in some ways part, but also like the people, like Spider-Man's uncle said, with great power comes great responsibility. Okay. These are the scattergrams. This just shows GPA and test scores it provided. Okay. It says nothing else about that application. It's not say if they have legacy status from a parent or guardian or family member, if they donate a bunch of money, if they're an athletic recruit. All those things are not conveyed in these scattergrams. What these do say is who applied from the past 6 years and what happened. Did they apply early? Was it regular? Were they accepted? That means a green check. Were they rejected? That was a red X. Were they waitlisted and or deferred? That would be one of the blue circles. If you took a standardized test, you would be able to see kind of on that screen, the little light blue person icon. I've asked Naviance this, they don't have an answer yet, but like for some reason you need to take at least a standardized test to be on these scattergrams, okay? So that's something that hopefully will change soon, but for now, looking at this data is really, really helpful to kind of see past data. Obviously, it's gonna be overwhelming. I've seen kids look at this screen and like spiral, like I'm never gonna get into school, oh my gosh. Like, don't do that. Just look at some of these data things and like the panelists have said, right? Like, or will say later on, looking at like what's the 50th percentile GPA or test score if relevant, right? Look at those, see where you're at. You're juniors now. You have time to make a change, to take different classes, to make a better choice with your time, to make a better choice with what you're doing with your classes right now, right? So it's not too late. You're not like applying this second, right? Make sure you're taking things seriously. Look at the data that supports what your goals are, okay? Things out there, like the Barron's publication, College Board has stuff on their website. Prison Review. I really like College Scorecard. That's something that the Department of Ed, the federal Department of Ed, maintains. You compare like up to 10 schools, looking at them side by side, like graduation rates, financial aid stuff, selectivity. It's a great, very clean UI. I like it a lot. I use it all the time. But like look online, talk to people, like use these websites use the links on our website to browse different things. And also look at the junior folder we just talked about, right? Like go in there, use some of those documents. There's a lot of things in there that, if you're just getting started now, might look a little daunting, but sit down with them, sit down with your parent or guardian, sit down with us, your guidance counselor, go through them. There's a lot of value in going through the process of thinking, what do I want to do? Where do I want to be? What do I want to study? Okay. And then lastly, that's a link again for our Naviance page meetings. Okay. Now it's time for Q&A with our 3 different panel reps. Okay.
All good. Once I went in, now it has start webinar. So we're fine.
Nice. I was wondering, it's like, it's not 6:30 yet, maybe you can't like start it, but we did earlier today, we could do start webinar, right?
Yeah,
Saw the button.
yeah. So I think
Cool.
we're good.
Cool. I'll be there, I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Okay. Just in case, but I feel like I'm so close. Yeah, go ahead and hop on. I feel like it's like up my nose. I just moved it back. It's okay. It's recording, so it's gonna get all that. I need to stop that. Oh, hey, Rachel.
Hi, Rachel, how are you?
Oh, you're muted.
I forget that I enter webinars muted. I just like to join and do my best.
Sure, it's all good. Well,
Yeah.
welcome, and we thank you. I'm Sherry. You heard me say my camera looks like it's up my nose. It's super close.
What do I think? There we go.
Try
Okay.
to.
Good. And then I'll just make myself go away and
Yeah, you can do, yeah, we're hoping, like, we might be done before 7:15, but it'll be somewhere around then.
I'm gonna just put you guys on the background and do emails and get
Perfect.
ready. Oh, we're releasing tomorrow,
Oh,
11,000 decisions.
exciting.
So, yes.
That's great. I know it's funny, I had twins apply and one of them heard and not the other one.
Oh, that is because they're major. Oh,
Yeah.
that sucks.
So they should hear tomorrow.
They probably will hear tomorrow, but I
Okay.
mean, there was 29,000 applications, so
Yeah.
the first round was 5,000, it should be 11,000 tomorrow, so we're still off
Okay.
by 13,000. But that is funny because we actually do pay very special attention to multiples.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, because the dad had talked to me and he was like, no.
No,
Not the other.
Yeah, no, we actually do everything within our power to ensure that if one gets in, that they both get in.
Yep.
Like that's
Good.
because
These, whether it's through research, through community service, or through global opportunities like our NUN program, where students can study abroad in their first semester of college. We offer several unique programs where students can differentiate themselves beyond their traditional collegiate experience. So we like to say that if your goal is for 4 years of classroom experience, fantastic. There are some wonderful schools out there for you. But if you want to start understanding how those classroom concepts translate into the world around you and understanding the impact you can have on the people around you, Northeastern really is the best place to do that. So we are ranked #1 in the country for co-ops and internships. 97% of our students are employed within 9 months of graduation, and 89% of those students are working within their field of study. So we really are setting you up for professional opportunities beyond your time at Northeastern. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Appreciate it. Magnolia, am I saying your name correctly? Hi, Magnolia.
You are. No pressure going last. And thank you for pronouncing that correctly. I'm Magnolia Maria. I am a senior admission counselor from Providence College, so about a little over an hour from you guys. I'm an alum as well, so I very much empathize with the severe biases I have in terms of that. And so in terms of just a little bit of information, so we are in Providence, Rhode Island. We are on the more residential side, so we're not right in downtown, but it's literally a 5-minute drive away. So I always tell people, if you want the experience of a city, but don't necessarily want to live right in it, then we're definitely a great place to be. Smaller liberal arts school. So we have 4,100 undergrads. We are enrolling our biggest class, which is going to be 1,200 in this upcoming class that we're recruiting right now. Small class sizes, so average is 20, 12 to 1 student to faculty ratio, if those numbers are of interest to you as well. We just added nursing and health sciences to our campus, so that will be coming with the campus expansion as well, which we're really excited about. Walking from one end of our campus to the other, probably about 12 minutes, just kind of give you a frame of reference there. But all in all, I would say some of our more popular programs would be our business programs, which is management, marketing, finance, and accounting, our biology program, health policy and management, and hopefully nursing and health sciences will be some popular additions to our campus as well. We are a private school. We are a Catholic institution as well. So I always get questions about how that may potentially translate to a college setting, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions in terms of that. But we are the only school in the country founded by the Dominican Friars, which are our mascot as well. Our mascots not the most attractive thing out there, but the friars are lovely people, I promise. I always tell people, like, so we have essentially 50 of them that live on our campus. And so half of them support us in administrative roles. We have some on our admission staff, some teach, etc. The other half are just organically supporting campus through student clubs, engagement, etc. So they're a very natural presence there. We don't mandate these like religious services or anything like that to our student body. It's just as much of your day-to-day experience as you'd like it to be. So if you're not Catholic, like totally fine. Not all of our students are Catholic, but again, if you want that to be a part of your day-to-day experience, totally welcome to. And then just a couple quick things to end on. So we are test optional. We don't require SAT or ACT. Typically slightly under half of our applicants will make the decision to submit those test scores. And again, happy to share some ranges later on if that's helpful, but if you do decide to submit that, great. Otherwise, it's totally fine too. It's not detrimental in the process, and it doesn't have any impact on merit scholarships or anything like that too. So we do tours, a couple campus programmings that we do for juniors specifically as well, to just kind of give them an idea over the summer before the fall about what our faculty is like, our student body, etc. So definitely recommend you sign up for those if you can. And then I said last thing, but I lied. I have one more thing, is we have over 100 plus different clubs and organizations on campus. So lots to do. It's a very student-led campus, which I think is what attracted me to PC, is the fact that I think PC does a good job at putting a lot of, I don't have a better expression, but putting its money where its mouth is, in the sense of like, what do students want? What are the events? What are the things that we're missing that we can give you? And you have a lot of autonomy over that in your day-to-day experience. So there's lots to do there, and within the athletic body there too as well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Mandy. I really appreciate it. I just want to apologize. There may be vacuuming outside my office door. If you hear some like vague whirring sounds, that's not me, I promise. So, Magnolia, you had just mentioned a second ago, your school's test optional. I'm going to go right into our first Q&A question, if you don't mind right now. Just letting you all know, we're trying to have a hard stop at 8 o'clock for our panelists because it's late for you all and for me as well. Obviously, if you want to stick around and answer more questions, we can give people your email addresses, talk with you individually if you're okay with that. So again, Magnolia, you just said test optional. I'll be honest, I've had parents come to me and be like, is this a trap? This is literally a trap. Like, test optional, this is a joke, right? And students like don't believe us when we tell them like, no, the school's told us it's okay. You can apply without taking a single SAT or ACT. They're like, are you sure? Can any of you just kind of speak a little bit about kind of like what it means for your institution, commitment to that, and is it sticking around for next year, or is it going to be suddenly starting tomorrow, actually JK for the next starting class? How it looks?
Oh, I am hoping it will stick around for next year. We have not yet received that official word for UMass Amherst, but I anticipate it will, if only because we just ordered our materials for next year's recruitment, and if they change it, that would be very unfair. So we are absolutely test optional. We request and review a lot of materials and a lot of pieces of information about your students, and the SAT and ACT scores are only one piece of it. If it's there, we consider it. If it's not there, I frankly do not have the time to wonder why you did not submit it. It simply is optional, and you do not need to submit. The majority of UMass Amherst applicants do not submit. The majority of students who are accepted did not submit. The majority of students accepted to our Commonwealth Honors Program did not submit. The majority of students who receive scholarships did not submit. There's absolutely no impact whatsoever on your score. That being said, being test optional means that if you do submit it, we will consider it. So very much be sure that you check the school's websites to see what their ranges are. Basically, if you are at the mid 50 or above, consider submitting. If you're below, just don't. I like to refer to it as going on it's like going on a blind date. I didn't ask for your credit score, but if you give it to me, I'm going to take it into consideration, and it will impact whether or not we see each other again. And the higher the number, the better. For UMass Amherst, that means that a 1280 to a 1450 is our mid 50 range. I recommend students really, especially if they're looking at our competitive majors, to look above that. When in doubt, don't submit.
Yeah, I would like to add on to that. I think you covered essentially exactly what I would have as well. Like in our process, we've been test optional for like the last decade, and that definitely won't be changing at PC. I more often than not don't feel like, at least with our applicant pool, there's much of a correlation, and like I got a high test score and like that's going to translate to 4 successful years. Ideally, we'd want that to be the case, but it's not always. And I feel like it's such a minimal like aspect of the conversation for us in our admission committee, unless they're extremes. Like at either end, if you're a math major and you got an extremely high math score, like of course, definitely like share that. It's going to look amazing in that process. But again, no impact on merit scholarships, which I feel like is where I get more often than not those questions. For us in the, at least in this early decision one and early action pool that we just had, we had slightly under half of, so it was about 45% of our applicant pool who made the decision to submit test scores. And those were about 31 average for the ACT and 660 to 670 per section of the SAT as well. But again, it's a really small aspect of the conversation for us, super transparent in saying that like I rather focus on how you're doing, what are the classes that you're taking, and like what are you doing outside of that as well, because there's so many more ways to stand out outside of a test that you're taking one random day.
Absolutely. And I feel like I've been bobbleheading over here, fully agreeing with everything that's been said. Northeastern is test optional through 2026, very much the same philosophy that standardized testing very frequently represents at most 4 hours of the best work that you can do compared to your entire academic transcript and history over the past 4 years. So while it could be a good indication of academic capabilities, we will never lean on it as the sole indicator of how you might do on our campus. And I think leaning in a little bit into the question that Sherry just shared about whether or not submitting test scores would impact you. I can guarantee in my professional experience, there has never been a situation when I am looking at two students who have similar academic profiles where test scores was the deciding factor. Very frequently, if we are seeing students that have any sort of academic similarities and we're really trying to split hairs, we're looking at what you're doing outside of the classroom more than what we're ever looking at what you're doing in standardized testing. So if there are really strong indication of your capabilities as a student, fantastic. But I would very much lean back on what Rachel said, which is if they're below the middle 50%, don't send them. It will not hurt your application, I promise.
Thank you all so much. You've been super candid, which I really appreciate because again, they don't believe me. And so hearing from you is really, really awesome. I really appreciate it. So kind of like switching gears a bit from into financial aid. I know that you three are not like in your job roles, like financial aid officer, obviously, but if you just speak a little bit about your schools, right? This question is, if I actually receive some need-based financial aid freshman year when I first entered school, is it guaranteed for all 4 years at your school potentially? And I think for Northeastern also, if I go abroad or whatever, or do co-op, how's that work maybe for your school? So Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic question. So just hitting first on the guarantee for the 4 years, Northeastern has something called the Northeastern Promise, which is a guarantee that in your 4 years or 8 semesters, not all students go on a traditional 4-year track. So for 8 semesters, your financial aid amounts will never decrease. Never, under no circumstances. You could win the lottery and we would not take away need-based scholarships. I just send my Venmo, that's separate. You don't have to worry about that right now. Your scholarships are yours to keep. We want you to make the most of what we are offering to you. And financial aid is a major consideration as part of that. That will include any form of like studying at Northeastern campuses and other locations. I will also note that with our co-op program, that's a time when you aren't a student. You are not taking classes, so you are not paying tuition. You are welcome to still live on our campus and eat in our dining halls and go meet with your friends and your advisor and go to your clubs. But you are working in a full-time job from 9 to 5. 85% of the time, you're also being paid. About half of the time, you're getting paid more than a standard college admissions officer. A fun thing to drop in there. So we want to make sure that you have the financial resources to truly make the most of what is in front of you. We don't want to like offer you this platter of unique opportunities and pull it out of reach as soon as you ask about financing it. So that financial consideration is always something we bear in mind. It is our guarantee to meet 100% of demonstrated need all 4 years. Another consideration there as well, if there is ever a change to the cost of attendance at Northeastern, we will automatically increase all scholarship amounts by the exact same percentage. We will never create a gap for you to fill because we want you to have what you need to thrive here.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can just
follow
jump in.
that, but So at PC, so we don't guarantee for all 4 years. What we ask for people to submit is like the FAFSA, the CSS profile. So the CSS profile being a form, for those who aren't familiar, that is more used for institutional money, so money that comes straight from PC. We don't guarantee for all 4 years, but as long as there aren't any drastic changes, your package shouldn't shift too much. We've historically met 90% of need in that process. And so in terms of need-based aid, that's probably the more relevant information to know there. Your merit scholarships and any like PC non-need-based aid scholarships that we have, those are things that when you receive them your freshman year and sign the agreement, you'll be keeping those for the next 4 years as long as you meet whatever requirement that might have. So it may be a service requirement, a certain GPA requirement. Those are all listed and explained to you before you sign those agreements, but those are agreed for the next 4 years as long as you maintain your end of it, essentially.
Similarly, merit-based scholarship at UMass Amherst is guaranteed through the 4 years, 5 years, depending if it is awarded through the admissions office. Different departments are able to award scholarships to specific majors. So of course, if you were to get a music scholarship, and I apologize if you hear the dog in the background that really wants to join in our conversation. If you change from a music program to engineering, that scholarship is not going to follow you. And then, of course, need-based will be based on the financial aid package awarded based on the FAFSA, which you'll resubmit every year. So if you do win the lottery, we are a state institution. So
Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you, all three of you. I really appreciate the candor you'll have. So next question is again about related to financial aid. It's will an older sibling graduating college on a full ride impact the amount of financial aid that I receive? So I think this is from a student asking about their situation if they have an older sibling who's finishing college when they're trying to go in. Question makes sense?
I would say that makes sense. Generally speaking, I guess the full ride would have to depend on, like, I would need a breakdown of what that is. Because sometimes I find that sometimes parents or students will say full ride, and that's like, we just got all of our need covered versus I got this very specific scholarship for my major or a merit scholarship that covered everything. Like the specifics of that matter. Because if it is a need-based thing, a need-based aid scholarship, what a mouthful. Those things at PC, that's information that financial aid will have in the sense of how many students do you have going to college at one time, and they are factors in that process. So it could potentially impact your aid in some capacity if it's a need-based thing. If it's a merit or something very institutionally specific, it's not necessarily relevant and shouldn't impact your financial aid in that capacity. But the financial aid office will be made aware of, like, there are you do have another child or anything like that going to college at a certain time. So at a very general level, I think that's the best I can answer for PC at least.
Yeah, I would definitely contextualize as well there. I think all three of us have spoken to multiple forms of financial aid applications with the FAFSA and CSS profile. The FAFSA is for federal-based aid. That is something that will look at your current financial considerations in the past year or so. One big note there is that the CSS profile does look at the past 2 years. So when you are submitting that document, be mindful that it's creating a larger picture. So any rapid shifts that may happen, a change in employment, a change in what you're providing for in terms of paying tuition for multiple siblings, those are things you should be mindful of. If you ever feel like you're someone that you're worried that you might fall through the cracks with financial considerations, speak to Student Financial Services as soon as you possibly can. Parents, if you are maybe your eldest child is the one currently going through this process, but there's one coming right behind them 1 or 2 years later, go ahead and submit that FAFSA and CSS profile now, because again, you are creating a register of your full financial picture. What can happen in certain situations is if there is a change in financial circumstance that happens so rapidly that it doesn't reflect your overall financial picture in the past 2 years, it might be difficult for Student Financial Services to come up with a financial aid package for you. So the more you are able to communicate and the sooner you do it, the easier it is to work through those considerations.
I would just mirror exactly what they said, except for UMass, we only require the FAFSA.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Super helpful information about these student packages, right? So the next question is about, if a student applied to a school through ED, but the financial aid package they were sent to them was not in line with the school's website calculator said they would be paying probably, can they get out of their agreement for ED? Sticky question.
We are not ED, but I will, after 22 years in the business, answer that question. It depends on the institution. And it is specified within the ED policy as to whether or not there is a out financial clause. In my experience, the majority of schools do allow that, but it is important to look at the fine print when you're making a decision as to which school you're going to apply to early decision.
Yeah, I would add to, I'm sorry, did I cut you off, Jeremy? I was gonna add to that as well, and saying sticky question with the sticky answer because, the calculator is speaking off of kind of more generalities versus when we finally have all the picture and have all the details, we'll be able to make a more specific, we'll be able to award a more specific package based on that. So we say for people, I always give that context for people to have in mind. In terms of what that process looks like, if you got in ED, you don't like the package is just not feasible for you. What we essentially counsel you to do is to go through an appeal process. So you do have the right to appeal your financial aid. Not everybody always knows that, but I always recommend that if you're not happy with what you have in front of you, the worst case is you just end up in the exact same circumstance that you're in. So might as well schedule a consultation with the financial aid counselor and see, they'll usually be very transparent for you in the sense of seeing if it's worth an appeal or not. So we will at PC have you exhaust all of the options there first. And then if nothing else can happen there, then that goes up to our dean of admission. So it kind of goes above us as counselors and directors in the office, and it'll go to our top officer in the office, and on a one-off and based on individual circumstances, if we've exhausted all options, then they will go through an approval process for releasing you from that ED.
Yeah, Northeastern is the exact same process that you just outlined. We want to make sure that we're working alongside you. So definitely let us know if there's ever a circumstance where you feel like you're not fully being provided for. I'm also glad you brought up the net price calculator. That is something all schools are required to have. So it is on their website somewhere, I promise you. But one thing that Northeastern does also do, if you're applying early decision, we do have an early financial read policy, which means that if you submit your early decision agreement before a certain date, and that does change from year to year. So I would advise all of you, if you're interested, to look in the fall of when that date gets announced. If you apply before that date, you can fill out a quick form saying, I'm interested in meeting with a financial aid counselor. They will actually look at your documents, not you filling out the boxes on the website and it coming up with an estimate. We will work with you as closely as we can to give you a strong estimate before you apply, so that if you decide then and there, I don't think I'm going to get the package that I'm looking for, you can make a decision to switch to early action or to not apply. But again, we do have that guarantee to meet 100% of demonstrated need for all applicants, for all domestic applicants.
Thank you so much. Sticky questions again, and so I really appreciate you answering them honestly, because it's a lot, right? The financial aid piece is a big part of the equation for a lot of people. Megan, you can jump in now.
Yeah, I'm going to give Max a little rest here and finish us off with these questions. So how many advanced placement classes are you looking for a future student to have taken in high school? I don't know who wants to start.
It is going to depend. There is not an exact number. We're not going through a grid matrix and checking off. It's going to depend on your school and how many AP courses were offered. It's going to depend on what your interests are. Were the majority of AP courses offered STEM-based and you're interested in art and architecture? We're going to be looking at your out of school curriculars. What are you doing there? It's a wide variety. I really highly recommend that students at any point in their high school process make choices for themselves academically, not based on anticipating what colleges may or may not be looking for. What we want is to know what you did with your time in high school, that you challenged yourself appropriately, that you were engaged, that you had an impact on the community, not because it fulfills some checklists that we're looking for, because that will give you the best experience and help you grow as an individual. And again, I apologize for the dog in the background, just letting me know that there's a late night FedEx delivery. So it really is about making sure that you're working with your guidance counselor and choosing the courses that are going to prepare you academically, challenge you, and that are going to reach your goals in terms of exploring curriculum.
I don't know if you, Jeremy or Magnol, if you want to add anything to that, or I can move on to the next question.
I would just say that we're looking for that kind of consistent like increase in challenge. So, ninth grade, you're getting your feet under you, and 10th grade, very much the same. Junior year is when you start having things kind of under your belt, but I understand we're already halfway through the year. So I don't expect you to like go to the counselor's office and request a full change of transcript tomorrow. But look for those opportunities to continue to challenge yourself. I would say we care considerably more for students who take the time to challenge themselves rather than students who perform perfectly in a safer environment. So if you're that student who's like, I would take AP Physics, but I don't think I'm going to do as well as in it. I don't need you to be perfect. I would rather you weren't. So look for those opportunities to push, to try something exciting and different, because I would rather hear your enthusiasm for the things you are trying rather than kind of staying in a safety bubble and telling me that you did perfectly on every single test.
You don't need to hear it a third time. I agree.
No problem. We actually got a good question that just came up. What kind of things make a student stand out or that you particularly appreciate in a candidate?
I don't mind starting with this one. I would say for PC, like what I always tell people, and I would say like you'd probably all agree with this, let me not speak for you, is in the sense of like, love good grades. Fantastic. We want to see that you're doing well, but that's really not the focus of the entire evaluation and review process. So I love to see what you're doing outside of that. Like I referenced earlier, PC is a very student-led campus. So we want to see, that doesn't mean like be involved in every single club and every single sport that your school has to offer, but it could just be like taking one or two and like really leading, taking initiative within that, because a lot of the times there is correlation between that and how that's going to translate to our campus. Like we want to see what are the new things that you're going to bring to our campus. Like, we don't have a stereotypical like PC student or anything like that we're looking for. We're looking for new, different people to add to the day-to-day culture there. So that's something that I remember more often than not. Like I love the straight A's, but I'm not going to remember them. I'm going to remember the quirky interests, the hobbies, the unique life stories and stuff that you have there. And those are the things that just stand out to me more in the process. I also think that sometimes students, I don't know where a lot of people get this kind of impression, but they think that they don't have this tragic, big life event that has happened. So how are they going to stand out in the process? What are they going to talk about in their essay? And it's like, you don't need those things to stand out in the process. You could just show me, like, tell me more about a big interest or something that you have going on there. I will also preface that with saying that we are also taking in mind in the review process that COVID has largely impacted your ability to have certain classes available to you in certain clubs, testing, whatever it may be. So we are keeping all of that in mind. So if you didn't get the chance to dive into certain things, use the additional information section of the Common App to your advantage. Elaborate on what you maybe wish you would have had the chance to do and tell me more about your passions there. It's a very underutilized space, I find. And sometimes the questions that are organically in the app itself don't organically lead you to something you were excited to share. So utilize that space if you haven't, is kind of my advice.
I think something that all three of us are probably getting at throughout today, there's a really fun F word that gets used in admissions a lot, which is fit. You have a lot of options, and Massachusetts, especially New England, especially, you have an embarrassment of opportunities in front of you, and it can feel really challenging to decide between them. So what I will say, sorry about that. So what I will say is that we are looking for students who are going to be excited to take advantage of what a school like Northeastern has to offer. The same as any admissions office, the same as any college. We are looking at a wide variety of students who on paper theoretically would do well in our classroom. And so we're looking for something beyond that. There is some it factor that every school has. I can say at Northeastern, We have 3 undergraduate campuses. We have 280 majors. We have over 3,000 co-op partners. We have, like, I could go on. And what I'm getting at is that you are going to have a lot of things to choose between. So we're looking for students who are going to choose between them. Make decisions, not because you think you have a clear sense of where you're going to be 10 years from now, but because you just want to try something out. Get your hands dirty, be on the ground, and experiment in these opportunities. And so in your application, again, I'm not looking for you to be part of every club. I'm not looking for you to, be student body president and have straight A's. I want you to find something that interests you and just go for it. Teach yourself an instrument, learn a new language, spend all your time volunteering, create a new club, push for social change in your school, find that thing that matters to you and devote time and energy to it, because that's what you're going to do when you're here as a student. So I know that's a big nebulous concept to be working with, but that idea of fit, think about the schools that are speaking to you now. Maybe one of us said something that you're like, oh my God, I want to do that for the next 4 years. Or maybe you're listening to all 3 of us and going, I would like to be done. Those are both very good answers. And you should listen to that, because you should find those places where you think you're really going to be a fit, because we will sense that too.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate all these responses. So this question is around languages. So my child is taking a level 4 honors language class this year. A number of the colleges he is considering recommend, not require, 4 years of language for admission. Does this mean 4 years of a language in high school or reaching level 4 of a language? Would it be okay to switch to another class next year that's more in line with what he wants to major in, since he's already reached level 4? So whoever wants to start first, go ahead.
Right, and this is a response you're going to run into with a lot of this entire process. It depends on the school, but for the most part, reaching level 4 is going to be sufficient. For example, actually with UMass Amherst, we will begin counting both foreign language and math in the 8th grade. If that score is available to us, we're really looking to see that students have that proficiency versus the exact length within the last 4 years.
I would say for us, so we don't count, like if you took one in 8th grade, so generally our most competitive applicants are going to have 3 to 4 years in a language. There are some, again, some asterisks to that. Sometimes people have accommodations, so they don't take a language. So we're not going to hold that against you. Or sometimes students advance pretty quickly within that. So they might have exceeded what a school has to offer. So we'll keep that in mind if you don't have the 4 years, but you exceeded what your school has to offer within a language. That's totally up to you. It depends that I'll add to, in the context of PC, at least in terms of this question, is that sometimes, like at PC, when we're looking at a recalculation process, so we recalculate all transcripts that come in, meaning they won't necessarily look like the one that you have in front of you all the time. And during that process, we focus on the main subject areas of English, math, science, social science, if you're taking a language, etc. So if you are thinking of not taking that language and maybe you're interested in bio, so you're going to pick up an extra science, we'll count that. But if you are thinking of taking like a business elective or something instead, I mean, I obviously we'll note that and keep it in mind in the sense of it shows that extra interest in finance, accounting, whatever it may be, but it doesn't count in the actual recalculation process of your GPA. So I kind of gave you that information to make that decision according to what you think the best circumstance for you will be. But I hate sometimes when I see students get really excited about a course, and I love seeing that extra interest, but they think that it's going to translate to that recalculation process. And it's just unfortunately not always the case. So I just like to always be really transparent with it.
Jeremy, I don't know if you have anything else to add, or I can move on to the next question.
No notes, ditto.
Okay. All right, let me take a look here. What advice would you give students and families considering community college for a year or two before applying to a 4-year college?
Community college can be a phenomenal option, especially because if you think about the opportunities available to you right now in high school, it is largely contained to 4 core subject areas, foreign language, extracurriculars, things like that. If you are someone who has niche academic interests or feel that you didn't get the opportunity to fully get your feet under you in high school, especially with the impact of the pandemic, we want you to, again, go after those academic opportunities that feel exciting and right to you. And if that means that year or two of community college, we will absolutely see that if you then apply to Northeastern. So at that point, you would be applying as a transfer student. It's a slightly separate process. We do still look at your high school coursework, but we balance it out with what you have done with your time in community college. One thing to bear in mind there, we're still a holistic review process. So sometimes I think students see that shift to community college as a shift to only focusing on academics. Still take those opportunities to be involved. It might mean being involved in a job or supporting your family. It could mean if your community college offers clubs and organizations, go try them. If there are local organizations you want to be a part of, we still want to see your ability to balance academic achievement with extracurricular engagement. So just because you're transitioning to community college doesn't mean you should fully shut off that part of your brain that wants to be like a full person outside of the classroom too.
As a state university, we are able to participate in the mass transfer process, so that I highly encourage, I think it's a great opportunity for students. I encourage you to meet with the counselors at the community college to make sure that you're signing up for. So if you want to do that guaranteed transfer to a particular school and to a particular major, that you enter into that agreement early, so that you're locked in and have that option. Doesn't mean you can't transfer earlier, but it's great to know. It's an option for a lot of students, especially for UMass in terms of our competitive majors. So for example, the Eisenberg School of Business Management is highly competitive at this time, and we are not accepting internal transfers, but we do accept external transfers through that guarantee program. So it really does open up doors of opportunities for students who perhaps may be limited because of academic performance, and that is completely all right, or who want to really spend some more time maturing or exploring work or any of the other factors that were mentioned in the question, and certainly could be in people's minds.
And my last quick comment was just going to be it was a statement and not a question of just like from an affordability standpoint. I know like parents and guardians can get very concerned about like, will I have the same access to financial resources in that process? For PC, we have a whole webpage of it online for our transfer students that details it, but we do have transfer exclusive scholarships as well. And some merit opportunities within that too. So know that you still will be awarded financial aid. You'll still be asked to complete the FAFSA and the CSS. So you'll have that aspect, but there are also some actual unique opportunities to you in that process, both merit and non-based, that you can apply into, and you're automatically considered for during the review process as well. So just want to reassure people there as well.
Great, thank you. So I think we have time for two more questions. Sherry, I'm going to take the last two. I think you just posted in the panel. If that seems good to you. Okay. Is there any pre-selection based on GPA or SAT, or are all applications reviewed irrespective of how many are received? I don't know if that made sense.
Yes, no, it did. So for example, for UMass Amherst, all applications are going to be recalculated. So the GPA will be recalculated. At that point, students who do not meet the minimum qualifications for admissions will likely be screen, but even at that point, we're touching them and looking at them. But I can tell you, we read them all, which has impacted us. We've actually received 5,000 additional EA applications, early action applications this year. And as a result, we are really only just starting to get decisions out. And that's because we read every single application and then go through a very rigorous quality control as well to make sure that we are not missing anything. So despite the volume that we're dealing with, we actually read for 5 months to let you know that the process, we take it very seriously. And what has really always impressed me with our readers including myself, but when I talk to our seasonal readers and so forth, is that they really feel an obligation to review all the materials that are submitted to honor the work and time and effort that students, as well as their letters of recommendation writers and so forth and family put into that application. So we really do appreciate the time and effort that goes into it and want to respect and honor that process.
I can say Northeastern is very much the same. I think if you've been keeping track of our admissions numbers over the past few years, have had a significant surge in the number of applications. We are now the second most applied to private university in the country, which is a lot of applications. But we can assure you that very similar to UMass Amherst, your application will be looked at. We do also have minimum requirements. Below a certain level, you might not get a full academic review. I will say, when we say minimum requirements, that is by no means the same as the mid 50 GPA you might see on our website. So for example, for Northeastern, that's a 4.2 to a 4.6. We're looking at students anything above like a 2.8. We want to see if there's anyone that there's extenuating circumstances, or maybe this person had, for example, last year, I had a student who slipped a little academically because she had less time in classes because, gosh, she was in Japan for the Junior Paralympics, and it really knocked on her AP Calculus score. Those are situations that we are looking for. That yes, there are times when we look at an application and say, okay, I might not have the full time for this, but when we do talk about like that minimum threshold, it is very rare that students walk into that threshold or find themselves below it.
Okay. Last question. What do you think about students who want to defer for a year to do a gap year?
I would default to the exact same advice for PC, the exact same advice that we gave to community college students. It's the same thing, because it's not going to look unfavorable or anything like that, but we want to see what has changed, like what have you had the chance to work on and develop during that time, versus like you kind of just remaining stagnant during that period. So whether that's you want to take a couple like casual classes, you don't have to, and you want to volunteer, you want to do some introspective work, whatever that may be. But at least on my end, what I like to see is what did you use for that time instead? I'm not saying college is the only path, to go to immediately after. That's not necessarily the right advice to give for everybody, but there's plenty of other things out there and resources that I like to see students engage in. So tell me more about what you did during that period is kind of like the only additional advice that I would give.
I will preface by saying UMass Amherst does not defer applications. So if you do apply you need to apply for a specific year. If you choose not to come, then you'll need to reapply the following year, and to be careful of the number of credits that you take, because that can change your application status to a transfer student.
Yeah, Northeastern, very much like with Providence College, we're just going to ask why. But we make it very accessible and easy. You'll have your admitted student portal, and there's a big red button right in the corner of it. Not red because it's scary, just because it's our school color. And it'll just say, I want to defer for a year. And then you get a question that just says, and what are you going to do in that time? And then the only thing we do to follow up with it after that is around February of the following year, we'll just like kind of tap your shoulder and be like, do you still want to come? Because we've held that spot for you. And that's for any of our programs. If you got admitted to our NUN program and you decide to defer for a year, we'll say, okay, NUN locations are going live. Are you excited to go abroad this upcoming semester in the fall? So we hold that spot for you in the next year. But we will ask that question, why are you deferring?
And just re-emphasizing, please look at your email. Please tell us is my thing. The amount of people that will get in and decide to defer and then don't tell me until the year afterwards when I can't do anything about it and I feel so terrible about it. So please don't forget to like communicate that with us. You will have to at PC submit that deposit to hold your place essentially. But again, simple form. We are more than happy to do it, but please don't forget to tell us because a lot of people do.
I think that is great advice, checking email
Yes.
to all of our
Yeah.
students.
Definitely. I'm going to throw out one more question because
Okay.
I know it is likely a concern of more than just the person that typed it.
Okay.
So one question that did come in was, the concern due to the pandemic and, guidance counselors or other people that might be writing their recommendations may not have been able to get to know the student as well as in the past. So if you have previously put a lot of weight into those recommendations,
how are you, prioritizing that part with kids applying from the same school? Like, are you looking at, I know you talked about the activities, which also took a hit, due to the pandemic. What other things are you looking at in order to kind of like counter some of those things that unfortunately, happened with the pandemic?
Oh, certainly. And, we are definitely not going to penalize a student for circumstances that were beyond their control. The pandemic, absolutely. Also staffing changes, or if they had to change schools because of a move, all of that is to take into context. My recommendation, and this certainly just to reassure families that is made known to us within the letter of recommendation. So we're aware of that information. But in general, don't make any assumptions though. Yes, we all experienced the pandemic. Yes, we all had to figure out where to buy toilet paper. But if you had special circumstances that went above and beyond that, please let us know. Please let us know if there was a family business that was impacted, which we then know would put additional stress on a family. Please let us know if there was a need to help care for younger siblings who were attending school virtually while your parents worked. All of those factors are something that we take into consideration. We can't consider what we don't know. So brevity is good, be concise, but do provide us with that information.
I think a similar point there as well is that letters of recommendation, I say this in like all of my visitor center presentations and all of that, it is not a space for you to just, for us to hear again how good you were in the classroom. It's not just us asking, did they actually show up for that class they got an A in? It's another opportunity for us to get to know you. So don't just ask the teachers who gave you the best grades, ask the teachers who know you more as a person. And when you ask them about that letter of recommendation, if there's any helpful pieces you can share, hey, if you could write this letter of recommendation, I'm interested in being a marine biologist and you were my biology teacher and I love this lab we did. Like those are things that help us paint that full picture, and very much to what Rachel was just saying as well. If there's any context that you feel is important for us to know, definitely have that conversation with counselors as well. Not to immediately toss it back to the three of you, but when you have the opportunity, speak about why you're asking for that letter of recommendation and what you're hoping will be conveyed in that space. Don't ghostwrite it. But, if there's any helpful information, the more you communicate, the better.
Yeah, and the last thing, I think was very well said. The last thing I would add is I think that if you as a student feel that maybe you didn't have the opportunity to connect as well with certain staff members, and you might be, you don't feel like a letter would be an accurate representation totally, then engage with us, give us more things to consider. So whether that be you had the chance to contact one of our student ambassadors online, you sent an email, you attended an event, whatever that may be, just give us more things that paint a larger picture so that we can consider those factors as well. Again, I always feel like the more information I have, the better. I can filter that accordingly to whatever I'm looking for at the moment, but it's easier to do that when I have more information than not enough at all. So give me more pieces to consider would probably be my bit of things.
Sherry, do you have anything to add or do you want us?
Yeah, just want to add, I just threw out in the chat, just the link to the junior folder. But it will be on the guidance webpage and it will also be in the guidance Google Classroom. I do want to just ask our, admissions reps if they have anything else that they want to last minute say anything else, about their school or about recommendations that they have, as well as thanking them so very much for being here with us.
Thank you so much. You guys have been amazing.
Anything anyone wants to add last?
One recommendation you're going to hear from a lot of guidance counselors and admissions counselors as well is please enjoy your junior and senior year, you as students and you as parents. Certainly there's a lot going on in terms of the college process. One recommendation that you'll hear again and again, and it's a good one, is identify a time during the week that you talk about the college search. Otherwise, let it be tabled so that you can allow for all the other experiences that are going to come in. And truly there is a good fit out there for every student. So enjoy the process as much as you're able and enjoy your senior year.
Yeah, and my bit of advice would be to while we as counselors and staff are more than happy to, an alum, we are more than happy to answer any questions and speak to that. But of things, I always feel like the most accurate indicator is going to be a current student. So most of us have student staff or student ambassadors or some equivalent of that online, or if you're on campus, you can probably easily access one of these student resources. And I recommend you just schedule a conversation, ask a question, whatever it may be, whatever accessibility is feasible for each of our schools. We do like Friar for a Day situations where you literally go off for the day. So you're not sitting through the fancy info session, the fancy tour, etc. You are just going off doing experiencing the day as a normal student would. And I feel like those things are very helpful because while these conversations are very important, the questions you're going to ask the current student are probably different than what you're going to ask your counselor. Both equally important in making the best decision for yourself. So I recommend you find space for both of them. And if your time is limited in terms of being able to access the campus or financial hardships, like in terms of how feasible it is to get to campus, ask schools, because most schools have financial resources to reimburse you for a train, a bus, whatever that is, if you need it. So just put out the ask. It never hurts.
I feel a lot of pressure getting like the last word here. So I don't want to like sell Northeastern at this last bit. Speaking a lot more from personal experience. That's why I started working in admissions. I came from a little rural town in Texas and came up to Boston for college. I know there is a lot of advice and pressure that you might be feeling right now, that college is about selling yourself to a bunch of people behind closed doors. My full-time job is to sell myself and my school to you. This is about you making a choice about where you are going to be happy, where you are going to be supported and have the opportunities to go do everything you could possibly imagine doing after college. So I know you're probably feeling that strain of like, how do I look the best possible on like a piece of paper? That is not what this process is about at the end of the day. It's about your chance to go find a place where you are going to go be really happy and successful and just feel supported in the space that you're in. So breathe. This is about you. It's not about us. It's about you. So if you could just kind of bear that in mind as you keep going through this process.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the parents and students that stayed on here with us. And if you have any questions, reach out to your guidance counselor and feel free to email the reps as well. And we will be meeting with juniors in their biology classes in a few more weeks. Thank you, all of you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Take care.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.